Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode about the movies with William Fletcher. As per usual, I am your host, William Fletcher, and this week I'm going to be, so I recorded this episode. It didn't go well. It sounds like crap, so I'm re-recording it for this. So I'm going to move a little faster through this. So this will be me ranking all the Pixar films from worst to best, and at the end I'll do a quick run through of the whole thing. So no preamble because I did have other episodes planned, like proper episodes, but they fell through because there was delays and stuff. But those episodes will still be coming. I just have to record them and then I'll have them out for you guys. So gonna do a quick through this. So Cars 2 at the bottom of the list. Not very surprising. It's not that good. It's really dumb, and I don't think I'm gonna piss off anybody by saying it's the worst Pixar film, and it's not very good in general. Honestly, let's just be honest. It's not good. It's not a good movie. Then next is Brave, which is also really not good. It's disappointing, and it's weird that because it's got a really the concept isn't. It's not like it's a bad concept. Like it could work really well, honestly, but it just doesn't. It's just really poorly. I don't know. It's just really weird, honestly. That it's just like so weird that it's just not very well done, honestly. It is disappointing because it could be really good. Like honestly, it could be really really good. Then we've got Cars, the first Cars, perfectly enjoyable. Don't really feel like going back and watching it, and that's how I feel about pretty much most of the bottom half. Honestly, I will probably very rarely watch these again. If anything, I'll probably only watch them when I do like a Pixar full watch through. That's probably the only time I'll ever watch these films all the way through again. Yeah, goddamn Chicks. Michael Keaton's character Kachiga is a lot of fun. I will give him that. I'll give the film that. He is a lot of fun. He's a very fun villain. And they're just really enjoyable. Then we've got Good Dinosaur, which is perfectly mediocre, not good, very weirdly violent for a Pixar film, but it's a kids' film in general. It's very unnecessarily violent. Like, I have no problem with violence in movies and stuff, and kids' movies, even. But this just feels like out of place, and it feels that very much it's just doing it for the sake of it. It's like violence for the sake of violence. It's sort of how people sort of say that Tarantino only has violence for the sake of it, when in reality the violence Tarantino uses is pretty it's important. Like the violence he has works and is important to the story, but this just doesn't. It's really really weird, which is disappointing because it could be the concept is really great. You know how the meteor misses Earth and dinosaurs are living with humans. That's really cool. That's a really interesting story. And by the end of it, I was watching it with some of my family members, and by the end of it, my oldest sister was crying because and that's cool. Because she was really invested, and that's cool at all. Probably because she has a kid, and that might have something to do with it. But also, it just doesn't work. I just think it's not good. It's really disappointing. Then we've got Cars 3, the best Cars film, obviously. A nice series wrap up, and I like that they made it for the people who like the Cars films because very because it's because if you haven't seen it, it's made for people who really like the first two Cars films, and I respect them for that. They're listen, there's only going to be people who care for these movies that are coming to see this. We'll make it just for them, and I respect that they were yeah, let's just make it for those people. Then we got Monsters University. Very disappointing, as are a lot of Pixar sequels / prequels. Very disappointing. Just not, yeah, perfectly enjoyable. But what probably the best bit in the whole movie is when they've got I forgot his character's name, but It's his mom. It's the guy who like their house they lives in. And she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna listen to my dude." And she pulls the window up and she's like blasting like heavy metal rock music. Like that's just that's really funny. I've got to admit, that's a really funny bit. That's really funny. That's just really really funny. But other than that, and I like the whole sort of college thing. I mean, I didn't go to college. I haven't been to college because I don't live in America, so I wouldn't be. But I'm sure it's pretty accurate. From what I've gathered from people who have seen, like, yeah, it's pretty accurate to actual college life. Then we've got Onward. Very disappointed, honestly. I mean, it's not a bad movie by any stretch, but it is just like, come on, like, there's better movies than like. I could have had such a great movie, especially because with magic and all this cool stuff, but they just don't, and it's just really disappointing. I felt Chris Pratt character was incredibly annoying and too stupid for the sake of it. Like, it just felt like they made him a pain and a complete and utter moron for the sake of the story, rather than it just he felt too stupid of a character. If I'm being perfectly honest here, but I thought Tom Holland did a decent job with the film, and maybe because I don't have a dad who I do have a dad. I don't have a dad who died. Maybe that's what it is. But I just felt that like it just didn't really work as well for me, honestly, and it was disappointing because I really liked the concept. That A Bug's Life, one of the most mediocre Pixar movies. Not bad, just it's really just pointless and kind of a bit like meandering, and some of it really feels like, what's the point of this? Like, why? There's no point of this. This doesn't go anywhere. I'm not. I don't care. I'm not invested in these characters. I think Kevin Spacey does a really good job. And I know I can't. We're not supposed to praise anything Kevin Spacey's done, but it's like I can't deny that he's a good actor. Like, he is a good actor despite being a bad person. You know, it's a very good vocal performance and a really actually menacing villain for a Pixar film, which is kind of rare, honestly. Then we've got Finding Dory. Just mediocre, isn't it? It's I just don't. I just yeah. It's it just isn't really that great, honestly. It's really just it just I will say the stuff with like Dory as like a baby, like a very small fish, is really nice, and I think that's really cute stuff. And the whole like big reveal of like her parents laid out all these seashells so she would find her way home, like that is genuinely touching. And I think that's something that Pixar, even in its weaker films, are able to do most of the time, have really touching, like sentimental, nice moments in it. I think it's a really nice moment, and really, really likes really good stuff. Incredibles 2 is next. Covered this in what I watched this month for, I believe, June edition, and I do that for a lot of these films, so I'm gonna sort of breeze on by. Just disappointing, really. Not bad by any stretch of the imagination, just very disappointing for what it could have been. 14 years it had been since the first Incredibles, and this is the story they had. It's just like, this just isn't that good. The villain is poor. I do think some of the stuff, like the home stuff, is really fun and really enjoyable stuff. And like the fight between Elastigirl and Screenslave is really fun, really well done. Very bad if you've got epilepsy though. And I do think the stuff with the kids of Dash, Violet, and Jack together is really enjoyable, fun stuff. And Brad Bird, I still have to admit, it feels like a Brad Bird movie. Like it is written like a Brad Bird film, and I can't deny that like Brad Bird is a very talented man and very good, even though the film is disappointing. Finding Nemo, enjoyable, good stuff. Not going to really talk about it that much because I've got plans for that. Talk more about that in the future. So stay tuned, and it might not even be for this podcast. Ooh, why am I doing this? I'm a ghost. Toy Story 2 is next. The worst Toy Story. Well, I say worst. Saying when you say something's the worst, it sounds bad. The weakest Toy Story. It really just is the weakest Toy Story. I will admit the like stuff with Jessie when you learn about her backstory Probably the best scene of the movie and one of the best scenes in a Pixar film, I would argue. But other than that, it's just like a very meaty. And I say this, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Like, that's a pretty good score for a film that I think is like good. Like it's good, but it is just like it's not amazing, you know. Like people who put this as the best Pixar, as the best Toy Story, at least. Just I don't understand. Like I don't understand why they like it so much. It's really weird. But you know, enjoyable stuff. Luca is next. Probably we'll talk about this more at the end of the year because I have a feeling this will be either in or close to being in my top 10 of the year, 2021 films. Really enjoyable stuff. The villain was so hammy and so like cheesy and hilarious that I just loved him. I know he was like very dumb and very like unnecessarily mean, but I just thought he was hilarious and I loved that they just were like, who cares? Let's just have a ridiculously fun villain. I thought the plot was very basic, but you know, it worked for what it needed to be, and I thought it was enjoyable regardless. Up, perhaps the most overrated Pixar film to date. And I say this to someone who likes it. I just think like a lot of people sort of push out that first 10 minutes and think like the whole movie's a masterpiece because of that. I know people who don't really think the opening 10 minutes is that great, which is perfectly reasonable. But I just think it's overrated. I do like it though. Like, don't get me wrong, it is a good movie. Like, I enjoy watching it. I will happily watch it again, over and over again. In fact, it's just like, but it's not as good as everyone says it is. Honestly, if you think that, I would recommend you watch it again because maybe you just got swept up in all the hype, and that's fine. Like, I would recommend you go watch it again. Then we've got Monsters Inc. Really enjoyable stuff. The best of the Monsters universe because Monsters at Work is perfectly average, and Monsters U is the same. They're very average. I think probably because they don't have Pete Docter making them, and Pete Docter is brilliant. Pete Docter's great. He's a great filmmaker, great writer. It's really good stuff. I really like Pete Docter, as do most people because he's pretty good. The ending with Boo and when Celeste said goodbye to Boo, God, so like got me emotionally, and like it's just yeah, it's just really good stuff, really good emotional stuff. Toy Story 4, a bit controversial because people either really quite like it or they hate it. And I think that's a bit unfair. I think people like going into this, I thought there was a very good possibility that maybe in my head that I had rated it too high, but but I was like, no, this is great. This is great because it is. It is genuinely brilliant. Like it because the Toy Story through. God, sorry. The Toy Story films presiding that are like, you know, they're about Andy's story. It is Andy's story essentially. To put it simply, it is Andy's story. And then, you know, and then Toy Story 4 is Woody's story. And I respect that. Then we've got Soul. I really like it. The only major problem I have is I don't really care for the ending. I feel like it's a bit too happy for this, and I know like it's Pixar and there's always the happy ending, but it felt a bit like ugh. It just felt like they're like, oh, we need to have a happy ending, and I'm like, I would prefer if they had a little more like a sort of in the middle, sort of he accepts that he's dead and that and all this stuff, and he instead lives his life and he you know he happily goes into that's the only my major problem with it, and that's what drops it down. But still, really enjoyable stuff. Jamie Foxx gives a really good vocal performance, as does Tina Fey and Richard Ayoade, who I love to bits because Richard Ayoade is brilliant, and I love Richard Ayoade. Toy Story. Yeah, I don't really these top ones. I don't really think I need to say much because I think we all can agree they're pretty great. Toy Story, yeah, it started the whole thing, and honestly, I could watch it again, and it could bump to a 10, honestly, because it's pretty good. Like it's pretty good stuff. I've got it as a 9 at current time, but I could bump it to a 10 because it's great. It's really good. And, I think maybe again, I will for sure watch it again, and my rating will probably bump up. Probably not likely, but I probably will watch it again before the end of this year, and my rating may change. Ratatouille, a very controversial opinion, maybe, in sort of a sense that because people like this is another one of those like either people love it or they don't, or they don't. Like I love it. I think it's great. And I know that that's kind of controversial. Well, not controversial, but I know people who sort of have it as sort of mid to lower tier Pixar. And I don't really get that, honestly. Well, no, I kind of do get it, but I think it just hits enough of my personal buttons that bumps it up, and is why I like it so much. Inside Out, Pete Docter's best Pixar film, and that could change. He could make another banger, which is totally possible because Pete Docter is pretty great. Like he's pretty good. He's pretty good. He's pretty good. Inside Out, yeah, really good. The ending got me emotionally, and it just worked super, super well. Really great stuff. The Incredibles. Yeah, I don't really think I need to say much. It's The Incredibles. It's pretty good. It's incredibly solid. Shame Incredibles 2 was not as good, but, just really good stuff. The final battle in the city, like the third act, is fantastic. Incredibly well done. I don't even know why I put it as a 9, honestly. I feel like, again, some of these I could watch and they could bump up a score. Then we've got Toy Story 3. The best Toy Story, I know that can be kind of controversial. Like, I know everyone's like, oh, the original Toy Story is obviously the best, or Toy Story 2, and I just am like, well, I think Toy Story 3 just hits enough of my personal buttons to work. I mean, it's a prison break. Like, I like a good prison break, just in a movie or a TV show, whatever. Prison breaks, great. I think Lotso is a really good villain, and I just think the story is really well realized, and I think the characters also, by extension, are really well realized. And it's just really great. And the scene in the furnace where they're about to die, God, yes. And the scene when when Woody says goodbye, when Andy says goodbye to the toys, is so emotionally so so good. So I remember I saw Toy Story 3 in cinemas when it came out, and I was like, this is. I don't think I understood how great it was then, because when you're a kid, you don't always understand it. But people who had grown up watching these films, you know, because you grow up with the characters, you grow up with Andy essentially. You could be like his age in that first Toy Story, and then Toy Story 3, you're his age or so, and you can very much relate to that. And I just think, yeah, it just works so well on an emotional level for me. Wally is really good. Like I know everyone's like, "Oh yeah, Wally's really good," but like it's genuinely really, really good stuff, and I would put it as one of my favorite films ever. It's just beautiful, and like the only major like minor problem is the villain, but even that, I think the villain is really enjoyable and makes sense. Like it's not like the most complex, unique, crazy villain, but like he's really good. It's really enjoyable, and just like the ending is beautiful. It's just fantastic, and yeah, Wally's really good. And then number one, if you've been keeping track, it's Coco. I covered this in what I watched this month, June edition, and I think I don't really need to cover much more. Just this ending, and I will probably cover a lot of these some of these on the show at some point. But Coco is just so good, and I was really worried that this rewatch would make me be like, yeah, no, this isn't gonna be as good, and it's gonna drop down. But I was really happy that it said number one because I love it and it just is great. It's great. It's great. So I'm just gonna quickly run through that whole ranking again. Sorry if this feels a bit rushed, but I recorded this already, so I'm kind of just like, bleh. So I just quickly run through the full ranking again, and I'm sorry, but I like getting episodes out to you guys on time. So I'll do a quick run through and then I'll do plugs. So from the bottom to the top: Cars 2, Brave, Cars, The Good Dinosaur, Cars 3, Monsters University, Onward, A Bug's Life, Finding Dory, Incredibles 2, Finding Nemo, Toy Story 2, Luca, Up, Monsters Inc., Toy Story 4, Soul, Toy Story, Ratatouille, Inside Out, The Incredibles, Toy Story 3, Wall-E, and Coco. That is the full ranking right there. The top three are perfect 10 out of 10 films in my mind. And feel free to argue with me. So, plugs. Yeah, follow the podcast on our Facebook page, my Facebook page, and follow us on Instagram. Check out the website at movieswilliamfletcher.com. You will find all this great stuff on here. Check me out on Letterboxd. Search for William Fletcher. You should be able to find me. You can see this, right? As well as all my other ratings. Check out my me out on IMDb, Will Fletch, IMDb. You should be able to find it and see ratings for other things. So that's all for this week's episode. Next week, I'll be talking about the films that I watched this month, and then after that, I will be back. I've got some really fun episodes planned for some really classic films. Another foreign language film coming up soon, which will be great. And yeah, that's really it. Thank you for listening, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, guys.